Hello and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches on Channels Television. I'm Layo Olarinde. On the program this week, we experience the plight of many Russian men who have fled their country after President Vladimir Putin's mobilization order to the war in Ukraine. Plus, a bunch up of the Nobel Prizes award winners as they prepare to receive their awards in December. Since Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the nationwide mobilization drive in the country in a bid to recruit new manpower for Moscow's war on Ukraine, thousands of Russian men have fled. Our next report is on some men who have escaped President Putin's orders to neighboring Georgia. However, Georgia is not so welcoming.
Igor Tighe, a 49-year-old Russian marketing professional, has a simple answer to the question of why he fled to Georgia, crossing the border in the dead of the night on his bicycle.
The war plays a big role in my decision to leave Russia. Yes, I don't want to shoot anyone, and that's why I'm here. In addition, I feel deep disappointment about my homeland. I don't want to be shut off from the world. Not for me or my children. For what? I simply don't understand it.
Igor is one of thousands of Russian men who have left their country since President Vladimir Putin announced a nationwide mobilization drive. According to the mobilization laws passed by the Kremlin and reassurances by officials, Igor's age should mean he is not subject to the draft.
The danger is if they draft you into the army. In Russia, it's one thing how is written and another how it's implemented. You can see how 50 and 55-year-olds are drafted and sent to the front. I wouldn't want to repeat the fate that waits them. They are taking them all, one after the other. I had information that people like me had received their call-up papers. I saw how the call-up papers were being delivered to my apartment building. I didn't want to be checking to see if the call-up papers were for me or someone else in my building.
After Putin ordered mobilization, Igor, who lived in Moscow, packed his bags and his bike and flew to the southern Russian city of Vladikavkaz, some 32 kilometers from the border with Georgia. Crossing in the middle of the night to avoid many queues, he then took a taxi from 3 hours south to Tbilisi, the Georgian capital. It's a journey traveled by tens of thousands of Russians in the first weeks of Russia's chaotic mobilization. Alexei, a 33-year-old who works in media, spent 6 days queuing in his car on the Russian side of the border. He didn't sleep for the first 48 hours for fear of losing his place.
It was not easy for me to make this decision. I thought about it for a long time, for several days. Then I understood that if I didn't leave now, then I wouldn't be able to leave at all, because the borders could be closed at any moment. So, I made the decision to leave, definitely. I called my friends and said, "Who's coming with me?" One friend agreed to go with me. It took a few hours to pack and get ready before we got in the car and left.
Rumors of border closures have swirled around Moscow for weeks, denied by the Kremlin but viewed by many as credible.
I decided to leave because I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight against our brothers. And I understand that the mobilization would be a total global threat.
How many will remain and for how long is an open question. For those who cannot work remotely, finding a local job will be tough, and housing costs have rocketed, say volunteers helping Russians to acclimatize. Prior to mobilization, more than 45,000 Russians had already opened bank accounts in Georgia this year, according to central bank data, more than doubling the number of Russian-held accounts in the country in the space of just 6 months. The arrivals have stoked a mini economic boom with an extra 1.2 billion Georgian lari, which is their currency, equaling $430 million, flooding into Georgia through cross-border transfers. But for some locals, there is a feeling of apprehension. Some Georgian activists want their government to restrict Russian arrivals or close the border altogether. Under Georgia's liberal immigration rules, Russians can effectively stay in the country indefinitely without a visa. Around 300 people attended an anti-Russia protest outside Georgia's parliament.
When we have like kind of invasion of Russian so-called refugees, it also sounds very funny to be in the country on one hand occupant and the other hand refugee. I don't understand it. So these people can be like a mine, an explosive for us, which can be used anytime by Putin whenever these people get the order to start provocations or kind of destabilization.
If we still believe that all Russians who come here are opposing Putin or opposing this kind of imperial politics, it's still a problem for us. This inclusion of Russian culture, Russian social culture, which we are trying to liberate during the last 30 years.
Ex-Soviet Georgia and Russia fought a short war in 2008 over Abkhazia and South Ossetia, two regions internationally recognized as part of Georgia but under the control of Russian-backed separatists. The two countries still have no formal diplomatic relations, and Georgian society was fiercely anti-Russian before Putin invaded Ukraine.
On December the 10th, the recently awarded Nobel Prize laureates have been invited to receive their awards at prize ceremonies held on the anniversary of the award founder Alfred Nobel's death in 1896. Consisting of 6 coveted awards given annually, here is a look at this year's award and their winners.
The prizes, according to Alfred Nobel's will of 1895, are awarded to those who, during the preceding year, have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. Alfred Nobel was a Swedish chemist, engineer and industrialist, famously known for the invention of dynamite. This year's Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences has been awarded to former U.S. Federal Reserve Chair and Bernanke and 2 other U.S.-based economists. Bernanke, Douglas W. Diamond, and Philip H. Dybvig are recognized for their research into fallout from bank failures.
So I'm incredibly honored, of course, to be a co-winner of the Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in the memory of Alfred Nobel, to give it the correct full name, the prize. It was completely unexpected.
Well, once I heard the voices of the committee members whose voices I actually knew, I was sure this was for real. Didn't actually think it was a prank. I mean, who's going to call somebody at 3:45 in the morning? It wouldn't be a very good prank. They'd be tired for a couple of days from waking up that early. But I was very, very happy to find out it was not a prank, that's for sure.
I mean, I'm not 100% surprised because people will tell me that they think that I will get it, and I was skeptical. I didn't really think it would happen. I thought my advisor, Steve Ross, should have gotten it, and he passed a few years ago. And I just didn't think it was likely that I would get it.
The Nobel panel at the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences in Stockholm said the trial's research had shown why avoiding banking collapses is vital. The panel says the findings of the 3 in the early 1980s laid the foundation for regulating financial markets and in dealing with financial crisis. This year's Nobel Peace Prize was shared by jailed Belarus rights activist Ales Bialatski, the Russian Group Memorial, and the Ukrainian Organization Center for Civil Liberties.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2022 to one individual and two organizations. The Peace Prize laureates represent civil society in their home countries. They have for many years promoted the right to criticize power and protect the fundamental rights of citizens. They have made an outstanding effort to document war crimes, human rights abuses, and the abuse of power. Together, they demonstrate the significance of civil society for peace and democracy.
The Swedish Academy gave the Nobel Prize in Literature to French writer Annie Ernaux.
The Nobel Prize in Literature for 2022 is awarded to the French author Annie Ernaux for the courage and clinical acuity with which she uncovers the roots, estrangements, and collective restraints of personal memory.
The 82-year-old has written more than 20 books, most of them very short, chronicling events in her life and the lives of those around her. Her work paints uncompromising portraits of sexual encounters, abortion, illness, and the death of her parents. For chemistry, the Nobel Prize was jointly awarded to American Caroline R. Bertozzi and K. Barry Sharpless, and Danish scientist Morten Merdal for their work on click chemistry, a field of research that can be used to design better medicines.
I mean, it's overwhelming. If you saw the scene here in my place, you'd see what I mean. But yeah, it's amazing. You know, I'm somewhere between shock and joy. And I'm really happy for my research group. You know, I'm really happy for my former students and postdoctoral fellows and my current students and postdocs who I hope are still getting a good night's sleep here at 4:30 a.m.
Sharpless is a repeat winner. He won the chemistry prize also in 2001.
I must admit that I've been teased about this for a long time because the click chemistry was a popular area, at least as popular as anything I've done. And so I expected something might happen, but I knew that it was there are a lot of other people that are in line to win Nobel Prizes. So you kind of think, well, don't take it too seriously.
But the medal was greeted by students of Denmark, beaming with smiles as his colleagues and students applauded. The Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to French Alain Aspect, American John F. Closser, and Austrian Anton Zeilinger.
I was very happy. This has been a this is all for work that I did more than 50 years ago, and so I told I'm sharing this with Alain Aspect from Paris and Anton Zeilinger from Vienna. The three of us got the Wolf Prize in the state of Israel in 2010, and so in fact, following year, Thomson Reuters gave me a prize for being a runner-up for a Nobel nomination, but haven't heard much of anything since then. So I've given up holding my breath that I would win one. I'm happy to still be alive in time.
The Medicine or Physiology Prize by tradition was the first Nobel to be announced. This year's award went to Swedish scientist Svante Pääbo for discoveries about human evolution achieved through analysis of the DNA of Neanderthals and other ancient relatives of modern humans.
Well, I initially thought it was a joke, actually, that it was my research group who made an elaborate joke, but then it sounded a little too convincing, but it was hard to digest, actually, immediately.
All the Nobel Prize laureates have been invited to receive their awards at prize ceremonies held on December the 10th, the anniversary of award founder Alfred Nobel's death in 1896. The prize includes a diploma, a gold medal, a monetary award of 10 million Swedish kronor. That's about $900,000. The Nobel Peace Prize is handed out in the Norwegian capital Oslo, while the other awards are presented in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, in line with Nobel's wishes.
We take a break now on Foreign Dispatches. When we come back, Egypt is seeking repatriation from the United Kingdom, calling for the return of the Rosetta Stone 200 years after it was deciphered. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Foreign Dispatches. South Africa's Women Economic Assembly is seeking more women inclusion and participation in the country's economic landscape, with an initiative pushing for the participation of women-owned enterprises on the entire value chain to foster sustainable economic development.
This year's theme for the Women Economic Assembly is Unlocking Gender-Responsive Value Chains for a Resilient Economy, with a focus on showcasing how the public and private sectors have implemented their commitment towards their gender transformation in industry value chains.
For too long, we've talked about women only as employees. We're changing that narrative, and we're saying that women are business owners. Women are entrepreneurs, and we're not living in fantasy world when we say that, because women have already been entrepreneurs. They've just been dealing with an ecosystem that's been difficult to break through. Now Wikona is in the house, and we are busy breaking through those barriers to ensure that these women that own businesses are actually participating in the ecosystem.
Given the keynote address, President Cyril Ramaphosa said the reason for starting the assembly was to improve the economic inclusion and participation of women and transform the economy. He also highlighted government's role in enabling that there are more women entrepreneurs in the country.
We are committed to using the policy and legislative tools at our disposal, such as employment equity and the other laws that outlaw discrimination, to improve women's representation in executive leadership and address the gender pay gap.
The United Nations states that globally 1 in 3 businesses is owned by women, but women only own 1% of procurement spent on large corporations. A panel discussion was done on how preferential procurement can help small firms achieve goals of equitable distribution of resources, enable sustainable development, and play a significant role in promoting gender equality and poverty reduction.
When it comes to procurement, I'm very pleased to report that last year we procured 8.5 billion rand of goods from women-owned businesses. These are businesses that are at least 30% and more owned by women. And we see this as a journey, not an end, until we reach a stage where the economy is fully and truly transformed in substance and in form.
What the NEF has done, we have a procurement finance product, because we realize that as and when these enterprises will be getting those opportunities from various players, within the South African economy, that you needed to have an entity that would be able to respond directly to that financing need.
We asked some of the participants their suggestions on how the picture can be improved.
If you apply the framework of Wikona effectively, it will literally bring an activity plan that will implement all these frameworks. And fortunately, as a country as well in South Africa, we are the signatories of these initiatives. And further down, it also makes sure that the private sector as well and the government fully understand how to implement the 40% procurement public policies by South African government.
We are in the digital world now, where you need to make sure that in terms of the systems and everything, you are also far ahead. But that is the challenge that we have as women. We cannot be at the forefront because we also need the funding to ensure that we build our own platforms, to ensure that we have the resources and the capacity and the support and collaboration from everyone to make sure that we succeed.
The launch of the Gender Impact Collaborative Fund, $20 billion or $1.2 billion, for me is the highlight, like an umbrella fund. And we are saying the first quarter of 2023, come back, interview us, we'll tell you. Those ones that make commitment, what they have done, and how the money has been utilized, which sector, how many people have been employed, how many communities have been changed, that's what we are going to talk about.
How would you like to ride in a flying car? Well, the world's first public flight is taking off in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. It's a two-seater electric vertical takeoff and landing eVTOL flying car X2. Take a look.
Expensive VTOL flying car X2 made its first public flying on October the 10th in Dubai, marking a new era of modern and intelligent transportation. Guests and reporters lined up to check out the new vehicle, which is described by its manufacturer as an important base for the next generation of flying cars.
Aerospace brand is a global brand in the future. So we are now in the researching process. We are make the step by step to the international market. And first, we select the Dubai city because Dubai is the most innovation cities in the world. And this is our first public flight globally. And this is our first step to the international.
After taking off from Dubai Marina, the X2 flying completed its 90-minute test flight, marking an era of short-haul flight and intelligent mobility solutions.
This experiment is very important. The Chinese company XPeng, which is worth more than $20 billion, is one of the biggest manufacturers of electric vehicles in China and a pioneer in the production of flying cars. It has the resources to run experiments and manufacture. It has engineers, logistics and production channels. So it is taking all this expertise and putting it in the production of flying cars.
With zero carbon dioxide emissions, the futuristic two-seater is the latest generation of flying cars for the Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer and is equipped with an intelligent flight control system and autonomous flight capabilities.
And finally, on the program, prominent Egyptian archaeologists have renewed a call for the return of the Rosetta Stone from the British Museum to Egypt. 200 years after the deciphering of the slab unlocked the secrets of hieroglyphic script and marked the birth of Egyptology.
The Rosetta Stone, dating back to 196 BC, was unearthed by Napoleon's army in northern Egypt in 1799. It became British property after Napoleon's defeat under the terms of the 1801 Treaty of Alexandria, along with other antiquities found by the French. It has been housed at the British Museum since 1802. Bearing inscriptions of the same text in hieroglyphics, a Demotic and ancient Greek, it was used by Frenchman Jean-François Champollion to decipher hieroglyphics from 1822, opening up understanding of ancient Egyptian language and culture.
This is the first time there is actually public involvement in pushing the state to act on behalf of the people, that it's not just a request from the government, it's a request from the people. So I think these combined will I'm sure all these objects eventually are going to be restituted because the ethical code of museums is changing. It's just a matter of when, in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years, and who will have the courage to take such a decision, who will be able to correct the mistakes of history, and who will, of course, choose to stay on the colonialist, imperialist side. I think it's a telling situation.
A British museum spokesperson says there had been no formal request from the Egyptian government for the return of the Rosetta Stone. In an emailed statement, the spokesperson noted that 28 stela engraved with the same decree written by Egyptian priests had been discovered, starting with the Rosetta Stone in 1799, and that 21 remain in Egypt. The museum is opening an exhibition entitled Hieroglyphs Unlocking Ancient Egypt on October the 13th, which sheds light on the role of the Rosetta Stone. At an event to mark the 200th anniversary of Egyptology, Tourism Minister Ahmed Issa explained how unique Egyptian antiquities are.
Egyptian antiquities are one of the most important tourism assets that Egypt possesses. which distinguish it from tourist destinations worldwide. Tourism is one of the main pillars of the national economy, and it complements many other industries. It contributes to creating job opportunities directly and indirectly. The government aims to increase incoming tourism with 25 to 30% per year.
Egypt is due to open a large new museum near the Giza pyramids to showcase its most famous ancient Egyptian collections in the next few months. Egyptian archaeologists say they have called previously for the return of the Rosetta Stone and are hoping that increasing moves by Western museums to return artifacts that were removed from countries under colonial rule will help their cause.
This is where we say goodbye until next time, but remember, our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you so much for watching the program. I'm Layo Olarinde.